Hello, good afternoon. My name is Ruth Wana, and I and my colleague Hyen will be giving the presentation on avoiding burnout and strategies to help early childhood educators develop, strengthen, and sustain resilience. So, based on our agenda for today, we have an introduction where we give an overview of what burnout means and also resilience, what resilience also means. And we'll be giving a brief background on statistics and how burnout has an impact on early childhood educators. Also, we'll be discussing about the causes and effect of burnout. I will also be discussing about some of strategies early childhood educators and educational organizations can adopt to help educators develop and strengthen resilience. And also be giving brief recommendations for long-term resilience and a conclusion. So first off, we need to understand what burnout and resilience means. Burnout refers to long-term occupational stress and any unpleasant or negative emotions brought on by various job stressors. And this could be referred to as workplace burnout. So what are examples of these job stresses that could lead to burnout? It could be overworking. It could be long working hours. It could be poor working conditions in the workplace. It could be uncertain work demands. It could also be limited opportunities for growth in the workplace. So, all of this can contribute to educators feeling burnt out. And what does resilience means? Resilience refers to the capacity of individuals or organizations to withstand and recover from challenges, more like bouncing back from difficulties or a setback. So, during a child early development, when a child is still very young, they're learning, they're developing. So at this point, they need a lot of attention, they need a lot of nurturing. And early childhood educators play a crucial role in fostering children's development and learning during this stage. And this contributes to, educators having a lot of responsibilities. And this brings about a lot of demand in the workplace for educators because they have to meet the needs of the children. They need to have to meet the needs of families. They also have to meet the needs of their colleagues. So all of this contribute to educators feeling burnt out in the workplace. So, for us to understand the degree of impact of how burnout affects educators, we need to look at some of the statistics of the effect of burnout on educators. So, according to a global survey that was carried out with about 200 and 2,300 educators, 50% of the educators in the survey reported that they were stressed and burnt out. Also, Teaching Strategies, which is an early childhood resource provider, carried out a survey. And from that survey, 45% of early childhood educators mentioned that they were dealing with mental health issues. From that survey, 20% of the educators considered leaving their job. And 43% of the educators noted that one of the major reasons why they were leaving was due to the fact that they received low wages and compensation, while 40% noted that the reason why they were leaving was due to mental health issues. And from that survey, 8% of the early childhood educators also noted that they plan to leave the field within the next year. So we can imagine the degree of impact of burnouts in the educational setting. But this shouldn't be the case because educational organizations need to find ways and resources to be able to support educators, to be able to build resilience so they do not have to leave the field of early childhood education. So, I'll be discussing about some of the causes and effect of burnout on early childhood educators. So there are several causes of burnout. One which could be high turnover rate. So when educators leave the early childhood education field, and educators who tend to stay back shoulder more job duties that they can handle, this could lead to stress. This could lead to mental health issues. So I read in a research paper where it stated that about 50% of educators leave the field within the first 5 years. And we have lots of children, but yet we have limited amount of educators to cater for the children. And when this happens, this tends to bring a lot of stress to the educators. This brings a lot of, it could lead to mental health issues. And this could also affect the children in return, because when children tend to keep changing caregivers, it could affect them, because children tend to build a secure bond with a primary caregiver. And when they keep changing caregivers, it could have a negative impact on the child as well. Also, physical health issues could also be a contributing factor and an effect of burnout to early childhood educators, because when educators are constantly exposed to prolonged stress that comes with the demand of the job of taking care of the children and nurturing them, it could lead to health issues. It could affect their well-being also. And there are significant health concerns associated with working in the early childhood education field, because educators frequently interact with children who will not completely adhere to safety precautions, and this could make it difficult to stop the spread of diseases. So, for instance, during my placement, I noticed that children come in when they have a cold, and we're expected to take care of them, nurture them, and we could also get exposed to having a cold because of the child. So, also excessive workload could also be a contributing factor. There are high levels of stress that occur due to demanding nature of the job, meeting the needs of the children, meeting the needs of the families, meeting the needs of the organization can bring a lot of stress to educators, and this could lead to burnout. So this is a graphical representation of a survey that was carried out by ECE Voice. The survey was carried out to know the health and well-being of educators when compared to healthy working population and those who work in educational organizations where they are staffed above the minimum ratio. So we could look at the first section where it talks about self-related health. We could see that educators who work in organizations where they are staffed at minimum ratio, self in terms of self-related health, they were quite low at 57% when compared to healthy working population and those that are staffed above the minimum ratio. And in terms of burnout, they educators who worked in organizations where they are staffed at minimum ratio was at 66% when compared to those in a healthy population and those who work above the minimum ratio. And in terms of stress, educators who worked at organizations where they are staffed at minimum ratio tend to tend to well, tend to be higher at 49% when compared to healthy working population and those better than minimum ratio. And also sleeping troubles, educators who were staffed at minimum ratio was they responded to have sleeping troubles, and 53% of them responded to be having sleeping troubles when compared to those in healthy working population and those staffed above the minimum ratio. So with this we could have an understanding of the impact of burnout to educators. So it is important that educational organizations find ways, resources and strategies to be able to support educators to be able to build resilience so they don't have to leave the field. So I'll hand over to my colleague Hyen, who will discuss further on some of the strategies in which educators or organizations can strategies they could employ to be able to build resilience.
Now, let's talk about what we can do, both as individuals and professionals. To build resilience and prevent burnout, one of the most powerful tools is mindfulness. Taking a few moments each day to focus on our breath, to do a quick meditations, will help us to feel more grounded and less overwhelmed. Another important strategy that we can apply is setting a clear boundaries. As educator, we often have to take work home, whether it's planning a lesson or worrying about a child. It's essential for us to leave work at workplace and protect our personal times. Physical health is also play a big role in resilience. Regular movement, even just a walk after lunch, can boost our mood and energies. And then we have peer support, uh, like talking with your coworker, joining a professional group, or even just venting to a friend can help us to feel less alone, and we can actually realize that we don't have to carry everything by ourselves. And lastly, self-care. This is something that we often forget, like reading, painting, cooking, or resting, like take a rest or sleep enough 8 hours a day can do something and bring us joy, is something essential for us to staying energized and emotionally balanced. While personal strategies are important, we cannot ignore the role of the workplace. Educator cannot carry the full responsibilities of resilience alone. Workplace should actively create positive environment where educator feel safe and supported. That include open communications, regular staff check-ins, and showing appreciations. Offering mental health resources like counseling or stress workshop is also an important way to reduce burnout. When we're struggling, we should have access to help without being judged. And professional development is also important too. When educators learn a new skill or attend workshop, it reignites their passions and help them to grow in their role. And finally, organizations should support work-life balance, and that could mean flexible schedule, realistic expectations, or encouraging staff to take the break and vacation days. And this small change can make a big difference in how supported that we feel. Now that we have looked at personal and workplace strategies, we want to offer a new focused recommendations to improve long-term resilience in childhood educations. Educators should receive more than just technical training. We need professional development that include emotional well-being. Workshop on stress management, mindfulness, and setting boundaries should be standard. And early learning centers should actively promote cultures of wellness, not just respond when somebody burned out. We should they should building a regular check-in into the schedule and encourage educators to take break without feeling guilty. We also recommend to create a peer mentoring program. This can help educators feel less alone, especially those who are new to the field or working in a high stress environment. And we believe that resilience isn't just about bouncing back, it's about growing through challenges. And by combining self care with a strong system of support, we can help educators thrive, and the outcome for children are much better. In conclusion, burnout in early childhood educations is a serious issue that impacts not just educator, but the children that we care for and the overall quality of care. By, developing resilience through mindfulness, boundary, and self-care and communities, we can be better handle the pressures of this field. And just as importantly, system and workplace must step up to support educator through thoughtful policies and the culture of care. When we care for ourselves and each other, we create a healthier, happier, and more sustainable future in early childhood educations. Thank you so much for listening to our presentations, and thank you to the professor who gave us the opportunities to research about this problem to help each others and help ourselves to avoiding burnout in early childhood education setting. And if you have any questions or concern, please let us know in the feedback. Below is our reference pages. Thank you so much again.